Hello there, and welcome to the second episode of the Be Wise Chronicles with me, Clive Davis, and him over there.
Alan Rees.
All right, Alan, how's it going?
I'm here between, I'm of the darkness, so I'm right here in the middle, just in case you can't see me.
Right, okay, good to know. So me and Alan are going to do nothing less than going to start World War III.
I mean, are we talking about the original now, or are we talking about RAINBO?
Well, let's say what we're going to be talking about then. So, yes,
Okay.
so the show here, the remit, is pure nostalgia, and me and Al reminisce about films of our youth, the films that formed us. These are the films to blame when you see we are today. And particularly centered around there was a kind of a budget store called Be Wise, because you were being wise if you shopped there, right? You had a bargain. So
very much so.
Hence the logo of the shop being a owl in a motorboard, because this signifies wisdom, as we know.
Didn't he have a monocle?
He might have done. He might have done.
Maybe.
But that could be the Mandela effect again, because apparently the.
What, did he have shares in it?
No, apparently was it the what's the peanut with the who's he advertised? The peanut with like the what do you call one of them twirling batons?
Okay.
Is it Monopoly? It's not Monopoly, is it? Is that no?
Peanut? Yeah. He's Monopoly. Yes.
Why is a peanut on the Monopoly box then?
There isn't.
Oh. Well, anyway,
I mean,
I'm getting confused. There's some. Oh yeah, there's a. Yeah, see, I'm getting confused between. See, this is the Mandela effect in effect. The guy on the cover of the Monopoly box has a cane and a monocle, right? But he doesn't, or something like that. It's like you're misremembering it. And then
maybe he does.
Anyway, we're explaining this well. You've heard of this Mandela effect?
I mean, this conversation is, sex gold right now.
Are you aware of the Mandela effect? Is this something that's made it into your consciousness?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I'm just trying to decipher your description of it right now.
Yeah, well, basically, for those who don't know, it's one of those. It's a modern kind of terminology for basically mass misremembering of things, right? And as the famous example is the reason it's called Mandela effect is because lots of people assume that Nelson Mandela died in the mid-80s, but he didn't. So when he died a few years ago, lots of people were surprised and went, "Huh? Well, didn't Nelson Mandela die years ago?" But he didn't. Anyway, that's where it.
Because everyone's convinced they went to his funeral or whatever.
Sorry?
Because everyone was convinced they'd been there for like his funeral, etc.
Yeah, exactly. It was someone else who died, wasn't it? It was someone else who died, and there was a state funeral, and they got it confused with Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Nelson Mandela effect actually might it's worth, because it'll probably come into play a lot during this run of episodes, I suspect. Although you're less susceptible to it than most, because you have, or at least had, a steel trap memory.
I mean, I don't remember. Well, I this is the first time I've seen the original.
Rebel. But, oh yeah, I forgot to actually say what we were doing in the end. We're doing the So the film we picked that is actually from our youth is something called A Man Called Rainbow, which we'll explain what it is in a little bit. But to get to A Man Called Rainbow, we first have to talk about the film it was edited from. Rebel.
Yes, indeed. This is the first time I've seen Rebel.
Same here, the original version, yeah.
And man, it was hard work getting through it.
Yeah, and it's only
in the respect there was no continuity. There was no continuity kind of acid. I mean, it would jump from one scene to another. There was no kind of rhyme or reason sometimes. I felt, and I mean, to a degree, that's what happens in Rainbow also. But I can't remember being 14, 15, whatever it was, when we were watching it, and it being so laborious isn't the word, but
although
I don't know.
That is a word you could use.
I mean, yes, because it's funny, but the funny joke is repeated so much in the film then that it loses any kind of potency.
Yeah, it beats you into submission, I think, doesn't it? So you just kind of laugh out of exhaustion or something.
Yes, and yeah, I think the best line comes almost at the end, but which that's the most memorable one for me. But it made me laugh out loud. So
okay, well, so just for clarification, so the way this goes is there was a film that was made in, I think, 1972, 1973, that was originally called No Place to Hide. And it's a very early starring role for Sylvester Stallone.
Would it be an actual film, or was it like a student film?
And I think it was a proper film, albeit independent and very low budget.
Because if you know, with most like student-y films or whatever, it's the same surname that keeps cropping up on a lot of the credits.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure they got everyone involved, to help out. So
yeah, shame they didn't have an actual story writer. But we were.
Yeah, so this is the main guy behind this is director, writer, producer Robert Allen Schnitzer, who later went on to make a horror film called The Premonition. Script by Larry Beinhardt, who later went on to write this book called American Hero, which was the source material for, do you remember that film Wag the Dog?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So the guy who wrote the book that film was based. I've not read the book, but apparently the film is vastly different from the book. The book is more interesting. I didn't get on with that film particularly well, but
I mean, it's going back a bit now. I haven't seen it myself for, I don't know, 20 years probably. So, yeah.
It was pretty broad satire from what I remember. It wasn't too subtle.
Yeah.
So they made this film in a sense starring Sylvester Stallone, kind of between his first starring role in Party at Kitty and Studs, aka the Italian Stallion, the softcore sex film which he made, which isn't bad, to be honest, for that kind of thing. And prior to him being in The Lords of Flatbush, the kind of juvenile delinquent film he made with Henry Winkler, which is very good. I don't know if you've ever seen The Lords of Flatbush.
I can't remember it at the top of my head.
It's a good one.
Okay.
So in between you made this, and but the version that we saw it as Rebel is actually I think a 1986 re-edit of the film.
Would it have been that late?
Well, I didn't think so. I thought it would be a bit earlier, but apparently it's 1986 they did it, and yeah, they did all of this. You can tell they're very 80s looking, like video graphics, right, with insert text and stuff like that. And there's a bit of music as well, which I could have sworn sounded more like 90s. So maybe it is as late as 86 that they.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how much that differs from the original cut, but and it's basically Sylvester Stallone plays Jerry Savage, who hitchhikes into New York City with some hippies. Dirty hippies, and he's en route to basically he's joining like a radical group, and they get in bed with some kind of terrorists, and they want to blow up. If I'm getting this right, there's a company that makes something called tiger cages, right? Which are some kind of like little like steel cell trap things that you can put people in and chuck them in rivers and.
Yeah, from basically a remnant of the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
or
no,
actually,
it is.
No, it was based on for the Vietnam War, because the film was based in the 60s.
Yeah, it's set in 1969, right? And it would have still been going on anyway in 72, 73, right? But I'm unclear I'm not sure from because it is a very confusing film, like you said. I'm not sure if these traps are being used to put Viet Cong in, or if they're being used on Americans. I'm not sure, or both.
Yeah, probably both, because it's I think it's just down to the corporate kind of mentality of let's make money out of both sides kind of thing. So
right,
it was more like a POW camp, regardless if it was one side or the other. It was just
right
a ways to means, then, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. The whole war is a racket thing, right? Glad you brought up.
But as you said that now, I watched Rebel 2 days ago, and I forgot about the tiger cages until right now. That's how much the story jumped. And granted, I watched Rainbow yesterday, and again, it'd be interesting. So you've got editing for 86,
yes,
down for Rebel. When was Rainbow edited?
I think a few years later, like 89.
Okay. Interesting.
So I'm guessing around about that time, it must have fallen into the public domain in some way for people to have been able to do that and get away with it, right? The original film must have been public domain.
Right.
So yeah, so and meanwhile, he's fallen in love with one of the dirty hippies. He's kind of fallen for this girl who makes jewelry, and she's very much kind of opposed to his worldview of using force to make peace, I guess. And he doesn't understand her either. Like, he thinks, no, you can't just sit around and do whatever you want. You have to do something to exact change, and there's all these kinds of blah blah blah. And yeah, and in a kind of shock ending, I guess, things don't end well for her, right? I suppose we're
getting. Yeah,
it's basically.
It's amazing that all that happened. Are we saying what happened?
Yeah, we might as well. She gets blown up by one of his bombs that was supposed to go to the offices, and it gets mixed up with a present. It's very contrived and confused.
But it doesn't. But also, she just picks it up from the car, whereas he's apparently driven miles upon miles in this rickety old Volkswagen vehicle, which probably didn't have any suspension, and it didn't go off then. It went off when she gently picked it up from a seat. Right.
Yes. Yeah. And then
and it didn't really go off because the car was intact. When you see the actual explosion.
Yes, and then
I made more mess in the bathroom with some talcum powder than that exploded. But there we go.
Yeah, but then again, you are an animal in the bathroom, Alan, as we all know. That's why I don't bathe with you anymore. I refuse.
But we still bathe, but we don't dry off together.
No, I leave and do it elsewhere. Drip dry.
Indeed.
But yes, you're quite right. Yeah, there's a explosion, and then some smoke, and someone's put some scraps of something on the floor in a circle to make it look like the remnants of a car, right? But the thing is that I don't mind that so much. You can get it. It's a low budget film, right? But it's like you said. It's because I thought A Man Called Rainbow. It's interesting when we get to A Man Called Rainbow. there's a certain kind of surreal tone to it because it's all over the place. But that's kind of seems to be in it from the beginning, right? Because there's all these scenes, like there's a scene when they're in the coffee shop and like the waitress in the diner gets like an out of focus close up where she just stares at one of the characters, and it's like it's kind of dislocated, spatially dislocated, right? And it's kind of weird and surreal, some bits, like it's edited in a very weird way, where everything seems slightly dislocated from everything else, and it doesn't really.
Yeah, she goes to a coffee shop, if I'm remembering. Then there's another contact. Then she's in a ballet dancing class,
or belly dancing, even.
What did I say?
Ballet dancing.
Belly dancing. Sorry, it's
right.
the accent. It's the accent.
Right. Yes. Yo.
I can't do the accent.
Alan.
The belly, and then all of a sudden, then she's a pseudo stripper also.
Right. And of course, one of them is an undercover agent as well, right? Because once they hook up with these people with bombs and stuff, the FBI in color get involved, right? But it is quite confusing, even if you say, because I was sat down and I was kind of trying to follow it, but it is confusing, and then after a while quite boring, so your mind doesn't really want to follow it anymore.
Yeah, it was one of those films where I would tap the screen just to see how long there would be left.
Right.
And for something that was 120 minutes long, it took a long time to get to that point where sometimes I would stop. I think I drank 3 cups of coffee.
It's not 120 minutes
for
long.
Something else to do. And a lot of chocolate. I watched it during breakfast or whatever, and man, I haven't taken that long to eat or digest. Well, I probably digested all of my breakfast in that time. Well, it felt like it anyway.
It's not 120 minutes long, Alan. Or did you watch some supercut? It's like under 80 minutes. It feels like over 120 minutes. I'll give you that. But
well, that's what the counter was saying on where I was watching anyway, or an hour and 20 then.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sorry, yes.
But no, I understand that you must have felt like you'd been there 2 hours.
And then Rainbow then was at least 20 minutes longer again.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because they've added. Yeah, so just to finish up with Rebel, then I would like to say I wouldn't mind glutton for punishment, but I wouldn't mind seeing the original No Place to Hide version, because I'm wondering if when they re-edited it, if they fucked it up somewhat, and if it did actually make sense in the original version. I mean, it looks.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you've said that now, that it was in '86. I just quickly looked up. I mean, First Blood was '82.
Yeah.
And then Rambo 2 was 85. Yeah. So if this would have been edited in '86, was it a ploy to get it back out in the mainstream to piggyback
no doubt
onto that success? But if you'd have done that, and then obviously you got to proof watch what you've re-edited, and holy hellfire, what the hell's the first one looking like then? If this is what they actually churned out to try and make a success of it,
right? And I read somewhere as well, I think the Rebel video actually, I think it got released in the UK, so I think it was a UK thing rather than elsewhere. It seems to have been something that was done for the UK market. Which is what I read. But then again, I read a lot of things that I couldn't.
It might be a copyright thing. It might be a copyright thing.
Yeah, it could be in the UK. Yeah. And also, I read somewhere that this was vaguely based on some sort of true story, that Jerry Savage is a real. And I can kind of, it is the kind of thing you can imagine might be based on a true story. But I couldn't find I couldn't find much more beyond that. I couldn't track down the original story.
Okay, so that's the original. We're talking about Rainbow, which was re-edited late 80s, you say?
Yeah, 89, 90, yeah.
Okay, and it took, let's say, 5 years for it to get to B-Wise Commander.
Yes, so here we go. So this is where we enter with it. This is when we discovered it. On the shelves of B-Wise, when we were being dazzled and wowed by all their other things like This Saturday Night. That was just in cinemas.
Half a Loaf of Kung Fu.
Yeah, and other classics which we'll be getting
Adam's Family Values and First.
Right. But
that was always front and center, because I think that's what was sucking people in, because that was Adam's Family Values. That was
still a new film as well.
Yeah, 94, 95, I think.
Yeah, you might be overestimating with sucking people in. I mean, it was you, me, and maybe one other person wondering about.
Yeah, and it's probably my mother, because that's where my mother got most of my Christmas presents from, probably.
Yeah, to be fair, you were an easy buy. Just buy some shit.
Give me a film.
Yeah.
Bring me some Cellulite Classic.
And a man
called $1.99 or whatever it was.
A Man Called Rainbow, I think must have jumped out at the shelves because it had that kind of funny cover and making Sylvester Stallone look kind of like a little bit cross-eyed, and obviously
it looked photocopied. That's what the cover. It looked photocopied, and I know that's the intention. It has to look a little kind of not obscure, but it has to look a little kind of au fait. But it made him boss-eyed and simple looking.
So I think I bought this. But I don't remember. Were you there at the momentous purchasing of A Man Called Rainbow, or were you not? Do you remember picking this up, or do you have any memories of seeing it on the shelf?
I think you told me about it, and then I subsequently purchased it.
Yes, you had your own copy, didn't you?
Yes, I had my own copy, which died of death. There was something very cheap about everything about it, because it got all moldy and.
Right.
But then again, I purchased another copy. I got myself another copy somehow. About 97, because nostalgia, whatever. I didn't rewatch it. I just wanted a copy of it. But it wasn't in B-Wise. I must have. How did I get it? It must have been B-Wise. But anyway, I digress.
It's on YouTube now, so you can all see it and
the delight.
Yeah, so basically what they did with A Man Called Rainbow was they took Rebel and basically did a spoof parody dub, which is something they used to do a lot more. You don't see it so much nowadays, but I remember there were a few of these things. I think they did the original Night of the Living Dead at least a few times. Was kind of, again, because it's in the public domain, right? So they re-released it with a comedy dub.
Right.
And What's Up, Hideous Sun Demon is another one I remember. But this was for whatever reason, I guess they got good distribution. This was a bit more high profile, is not quite the right word, but it was a bit more visible than. You never saw those other ones around so much in stores and stuff. But this one you saw, at least if you were shopping in B-Wise, you saw. I don't remember seeing it anywhere else, but
I mean, it was flying off the shelf in West Wales Command anyway.
Oh yeah, everyone was talking about A Man Called Rainbow.
Yeah, but at least 3 copies were bought. So
to be fair, it did circulate amongst our group of friends, because it was one of those items that was. It wasn't necessarily, even back then, I don't think we thought it was really great, but it was so
bad. It was good.
Yeah, and we hadn't seen anything quite like that before.
I mean, what was so bad, it was good back then. You didn't have them. It was always an early 80s kind of show. And it wasn't even an Alan Smithy thing. It was more of a borderline student film.
Well, yeah. So obviously, what they've done here now, in retrospect, because when we first got our mitts on this, I don't think we were into the evil weed yet, but this was clearly made for stoners, I think, isn't it? This film, it's a very much, I think it's a film you're supposed to get stoned to.
I presumed. I haven't partaken in that kind of world, but
oh yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Yes.
You didn't inhale. You may run for office.
Yes, indeed, yes, but no. Maybe that's why the elongated kind of everything takes a while in it, but you know when he's talking to the horse, etc., right at the start. I mean, that's it. That's quite humorous.
Yeah, but I think it's a particular type of stoner humor. I think whereas if you're watching it sober, it's but if you're a bit under the influence, I think you're more susceptible to to just kind of going with again, getting absorbed in it, and just kind of. I mean, to be fair, it did work on our impressionable minds to a certain extent. There were things that made us genuinely laugh, I think.
Yes, I mean, I like I said, I laughed out loud a couple of times in it.
Yeah, against my better judgment, I did as well. Like just stupid things like there's a couple of cops, right? And they go and I know they go and there's like a warehouse or something that they bust in the door and this
but he's trying to kick in a door which is an outward opening door.
Yeah. But it's like they repeat it 3 times in the Man Called Rainbow version, right? And at one point one of the cops turns to the other and goes, "I'm gonna pitch a loaf like you wouldn't believe." That made me that's the kind of level of humor.
Yeah. Well, what are we going to do now? I'm going to go pinch a loaf. No, put the case.
Yeah, it's got very, very sub kind of airplane kind of gags. And then lots of, like you said, it runs 20 minutes longer. So there's lots of these insert things. There's a repeated gag with cooties.
That I didn't find. No. I thought it was more annoying than humorous. But again, if you're going down to the whole kind of, if you're under the influence thing, yes, having that kind of fluorescent.
Yes, trippy, isn't it? There's trippy bits. There's one quite extended trip sequence, which I can imagine actually would be quite weird if you were high. I mean, it's quite weird anyway. Towards the end, there's like a trip sequence that, it's got nothing to do with anything else. And the running gag is that in this version, Rainbow, everyone gets his name wrong. Hey, Dildo! Hey, Rainbow! Yeah.
Hey, Purple!
Yo, it's Rainbow. He's a runaway. He's a deserter. He's a Vietnam veteran, but somewhere along the way he stepped in radioactive dog shit. So, he smells of poop for the rest of the film, which they keep bringing up.
I mean, that's another laborious one. I mean, when it comes to the whole shoes thing, when he's wearing the women's shoes, that's fucking funny. I laughed at that because obviously that's another insert, and he's wearing like sandals, whatever it was.
Yeah. Another one that's kind of quite funny is when he wraps himself up in a rug, and everyone lists all the things that have soiled the rug.
Yeah, well, that is funny because so he puts a poncho on because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And then he goes, "Hey, why are you wearing the rug?" Hey, is that the rug the cat shade on?
Yeah, there you go. And there's a long,
yeah.
And there's also a whole thing about, so they've dubbed Sylvester Stallone as well. They kind of make fun of the fact that he's unintelligible, right? That's another running gag. And the fact that he's trying to poke this hippie chick who's not interested in him, and he keeps going, "What a poke." That's the thing that became. And there's a few bits. There's like another one with the belly dancing woman as well, because there's a clip from the original film where she like gestures towards the camera. It's almost like breaking the fourth wall. She's like points at the camera, and they repeat that a few times where someone says something and she goes, "Yeah."
I will say she's an annoying character. there's nothing attractive about it whatever. But whoever dubbed her voice, very funny. That screechy, scratchy kind of way was just that's the best thing about her character.
Yes, I think her killer line is, "You bet your sweet pippy," which I quite liked.
But she also brings up the so they kind of follow the same storyline in Rainbow, where you've got they're going to bomb, or they're going to put radioactive shit on an embassy. So they kind of flirt along the same kind of lines.
Yeah, I tell you what they're going to do now, Alan, is they're going to start World War III.
They're going to start World War III, but they need a leader. And the way they select the leader, which again, kind of humorous, following on from the nobody can understand a word Stallone is saying.
Right.
So they've got to say, Peter, pick the pepper.
Yeah. Peter, pick the. Yeah. No, it's definitely the more the film goes on, it definitely just kind of, you can feel your brain, you can feel your IQ dropping as you watch it, right? So then by the time you get to the end, your brain's just kind of like mush, and you are attuned to the level of humor, I think, which is why I think it might work. I think I took it to a few stoner parties actually, and it did work in that environment. People who normally would.
I mean, by the end of the film, even the editors were sloppy and they even call it out like, "Oh, we're going to use Stallone, but he's wearing a white T-shirt in this, and then he's wearing a black one here." You know,
right? Yeah.
They call it out as the ridiculousness or whatever. Why do you change your shirt?
And to be honest, they're honest up front as well. In the opening credits, they do give credit to the original film. You know, they do say, "this is the original film, No Place to Hide," which was, already fucked with to make Rebel, and all that's in the opening. So even back in the day, we kind of knew what this was. And also the other major difference is in this version, the undercover cop is actually an android, right? The Giuseppe 9000, who's being controlled by like one of those
Fisher Price things.
Yeah.
Which that was quite clever. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, I mean,
the first time.
Well, that's the thing, is that like you said, everything. Once they have a good gag, they don't let it go, and you hear it at least another 50 times. But again, sometimes it's annoying, but sometimes it goes the full circle all the way around to being funny again. Like, I kind of started to titter a little bit when they started calling him all the different synonyms for rainbow, like, because they go through so many of them, and they get so desperate for things that sound like it that it's kind of it's so insistent to make you laugh that you kind of can't help yourself every now and again, and then think, oh no, I laughed at that. Like,
I know.
What's wrong with me?
But other things from the original, where that belly dancer, she falls off a roof, whereas in the film she dies. But in Rebel, it's before she dies, there's 4 henchmen that come up, and there's another 3 henchmen, and they're like, "Hey, how do you get up here so fast?" Which that was quite funny. I thought that was funny.
Right.
And then she falls off, she goes to commit suicide, all of a sudden Rainbow's caught her down the sidewalk.
Yeah.
I mean, again, small things like that. I mean, that was funny, clever.
They found a way of editing within the original material and reworking it. And then other times they used these extensive news, which, they obviously went to the trouble to go out as low budget and thrown together and shoddy as they are. They went to the trouble of going out to film that stuff, right?
Yes, they went out to film it. I mean, the Richard Nixon stuff didn't work for me.
No. Yeah, the Nixon stuff was pretty... I think anytime they tried to do genuine satire rather than just being silly, they don't really have the chops for that, do they?
No, I mean, the funny thing is where he's kind of doodling on his... Richard Nixon is doodling his own autobiography, making him look like a devil. I thought, oh, okay, that's a little different. And, marking down the prices or whatever, but the whole hair cream or foot fetish or whatever, and just like yawn.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, it was more of a speed bump rather than something, because it was designed for to move the story on with continuity or whatever, but it slowed it up. It was painful actually sometimes.
If we were going to be charitable, we could say that it's such a well-conceived stoner film that they even built in these lulls so people could go to the kitchen and pick up some munchies and then come back.
Indeed, or Brill cream or whatever. He was using all the time.
Crafted to within an inch of its life, and we just
I mean, indeed.
I like to look on the bright side. Yes.
All right, Eric.
I think that's us, right? For Dildo and Rainbow, and anything else to you want to add, or you good?
I mean, recommend it. I don't know if I'd recommend.
It's an odd one, isn't it? Because oddly enough, when I owned the video cassette back in the day, I felt I wouldn't have thought this is something, but I remember showing it to almost everyone I knew.
Yes, it was something that was definitely shared, and I think a lot of the people I lent it to in my circle also, I think a lot of them started it, never finished it.
Yeah, the joke, but it's a joke you want to hear for a little bit, if not the whole thing, right?
Yes.
And even now, to a certain extent, I can, like, for instance, if I met someone new for the first time, and you get to know each other, and you start talking about things, and if you discovered that they also saw A Man Called Rainbow in their youth, it is kind of like one of those things that you would bond over a little bit. Get out of town, Man Called Rainbow. You'd be like,
are you sure you're not talking about Rainbow?
Yeah.
Because are you sure?
Are you from Command? Did you go to BYU? I've got this awful.
Are you the third person?
I got this podcast you should listen to.
Yeah.
Or YouTube video.
No, I'll rephrase it. I'd recommend Rainbow again, but maybe not Rebel.
Oh no, certainly. I think everything you need is in A Man Called Rainbow plus, right? No, the original film is. I find it kind of interesting, but I think only because we're coming to it via Rainbow. I think if you'd have just seen Rebel or No Place to Hide by itself, it probably wouldn't be of much interest other than the early Stallone appearance, right? But because we've got this history with this fucked up remix version, it's kind of inherently fascinating for us just to see it, right? I suppose one other thing about No Place to Hide is if you're a fan of like seeing footage of old New York and stuff in the early 70s, there's some of that, I suppose, because a lot of it's shot on location, right?
Yeah, but so what sticks in the memory? Because obviously going back, watch this, was it 90? Let's say conservatively, last time you saw it probably 95, 96, 97, that kind of period. Well, now we're in 2023 now, watching it and talking about Rainbow. Or
what's wrong with it?
Yeah, talking about rewatching it from when you suggested this one, and I was like, all right, then things I remember. I remember the pinch of loaves. I remember that scene. I remember Mr. Ed talking about the horse at the start, and I remember the guy coming in and out of the door all the time, which was the repeat gag, which was funny.
Right.
But and maybe that goes back to I've seen it a couple of times, but maybe it was one of those kind of things where I'd always start it but never continue to watch it. That's why they're so vivid, the memory, whereas
I think
the
so.
back end.
I think it's something you were tempted. Oh, Man Called Rainbow, I haven't watched that for a while, and maybe on a Saturday night before you headed out, you'd put it on for a few giggles with a few preliminary cans at home or something like that. You know.
Yes.
And then,
but going back, I mean, at the moment in it, that again, falling, the henchman running up and going, "Hey, how do you get up here so fast?" That was another highlight for me. Her falling off the room and getting caught, I thought that was funny, clever.
Right.
But the best line for me was at the end when they're all trying to insult each other. And so I think the raspy girl, the belly dancer turns around and goes, "Your mother wears army boots" or something as an insult, which I just fucking lost it.
Also quite funny, actually, is so the other notable guy in the group, the big dude with the moustache, is a guy called Tony Page, who was in a kind of a low-budget gangster film around the same time called Family Honor, which I think actually Stallone was originally going to star in.
Okay.
But Tony Page got the main role instead of him. Whoever's done his voice is kind of humorous, because that's like we're speaking like that with his big hulking frame. That's kind of vaguely amusing. Like,
yeah, he sounds a bit like
having a conversation is kind of quite funny, right?
It sounds a bit like Blakey from On the Buses.
Yeah, slightly less aggressive though. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like a clumsy, sounds like a clumsy baboon.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, it's I suppose it's really difficult for us to actually separate, and that's what this show is all about. It's really difficult for us to separate the nostalgia from. It's almost impossible for us to be objective. This is pure subjectivity, really, and we can't really.
This is purely kind of just going down memory lane and indulging in what once was entertaining for us.
Yeah, this is puerile garbage all the way. It was puerile garbage when we saw it, and we still liked it. And I've considering how many, Kurosawa films or Bergman films or something that I still haven't seen. How many fucking times have I now seen A Man Called Rainbow? And I can't guarantee I'll never watch it again, right? Especially now that it's within temptation's reach on YouTube, as long as it stays up there. It is the kind of thing you might, like, who knows? I mean, I haven't smoked in years because it's a difficult thing to do here in Japan. But who knows if I were to accidentally get high again one day and I was within reach of a computer and I had a pal, I might say, "Do you want to check out A Man Called Rainbow?"
I mean, right at the end of it as well, you can see you can join the fan club, and I'm like, I wonder if there's like a link still. I think that must have been like one of those fake kind of pure boxes or whatever. But I was like,
yeah,
I wonder if that's still kind of.
I think if it was genuine, we probably would have joined back in the day, right? We probably would have sent off for the Man Called Rainbow badge or whatever. You would have got a member's card.
Indeed.
Anyway, that's far more time that either of these films deserves, but there we go. That's Rebel and No Place to Hide and A Man Called Rainbow. So originally I said we were up for doing Stunt Wars in this episode, but having a bit of trouble sourcing a copy. So Stunt Wars maybe next, but if we can't get a copy of it, we might put it on the back burner. And so just to maybe kind of get a bit of an organic algorithm thread going on here, you did actually mention earlier, it popped up in conversation, you mentioned POW. And
yes.
I seem to remember one that we sat down with in your grandmother's house back in the day, which wasn't a B-wise purchase, but it doesn't have to necessarily be from there. POW: The Escape.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's going back a bit. There was that. There was Death Before Dishonor was another one, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, for the time being, because I haven't seen that film. Definitely, I haven't seen that film since we watched that 30 years ago.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since we sat down in the front room. No.
Yeah, there we go. So the only thing I remember about that, I remember someone maybe going down a river and getting impaled on some sharpened bamboo, maybe, if that's ringing a bell.
Yes,
paradise.
Yes, and I think that's the only kind of vivid thing I've got from it as well. Yeah, water-based bamboo escapism. Yes.
And the other one I remember, which I think was another POW rescue post missing in action Rambo, was Let's Get Harry, which I think was an Alan Smithy joint.
Okay.
And I seem to remember that I don't know if that's since been made available in its, anyway, we might do a Let's Go Get 'em double bill next time, maybe, for the B-Wise Chronicles.
Well, we go from tiger cages to actually trying to get out of that.
Well, there we go. You see, just trying to build up a bit of a thematic link. Anyway, until then, I have been Clive Davis. He has been
the other one.
Yeah. And don't forget to be wise and check us out.
Floss your teeth.
Next time. Yeah. All right, then. Cheerio. We're off to start World War III.